power of money, a force that shapes the world. Money. A simple five-letter word that, despite its modest appearance, holds the ability to shape lives, societies, and even the course of history. It is much more than a medium of exchange, it is a tool of power and influence. From multinational corporations to small governments, from everyday individuals to global leaders, money's invisible hand reaches into every aspect of life, pulling strings behind the scenes. But what makes money so powerful? And how can it be used to gain influence, manipulate systems, and even control the political landscape? Let's delve into the mechanics of this immense force and explore real-world examples that demonstrate just how potent it truly is. Money and political power, a symbiotic relationship. At its core, money grants access. It opens doors to corridors of power that would otherwise remain closed to the average individual. The reason is simple: politics requires capital. From campaign funding to media coverage, every step of the political process involves money. It's no wonder that those with financial resources often find themselves in positions of influence over elected officials. This phenomenon is not confined to a single country or political system, it is universal. Take, for example, the United States, where the influence of money in politics is notorious. Lobbying, an industry worth billions of dollars, has become a means for corporations and wealthy individuals to sway policy decisions. By contributing to political campaigns or funding super PACs, political action committees, these entities ensure that their interests are represented in Congress. The result? Legislation that often prioritizes corporate gains over the public good. The 2008 financial crisis is a glaring example, where the lack of stringent regulations on Wall Street led to global economic disaster, while the influence of financial institutions stifled meaningful reform post-crisis. The global reach, corruption and influence in developing nations. The influence of money, however, extends far beyond the borders of the Western world. In developing nations, where political structures are often fragile, the power of money can be even more pronounced. Corruption becomes a natural byproduct of a system where politicians and government officials are underpaid or poorly monitored. Money not only lubricates the wheels of bureaucracy but also becomes a means of securing power through illegal or unethical means. Consider the case of certain African nations, where political leaders have used national resources to amass vast personal fortunes. In countries like Nigeria, the oil sector, which should ideally benefit the population, is often monopolized by a few powerful elites. These elites, in turn, use their wealth to secure loyalty from politicians and military leaders, thus entrenching their power. Such scenarios create a vicious cycle: the rich get richer, and the poor remain marginalized, with little to no opportunity to challenge the status quo. Buying influence, the power of oligarchs and corporations. Money does not only buy political power, it buys influence in almost every sphere of life. In some countries, especially in post-Soviet states, the rise of oligarchs exemplifies how financial power can translate into direct control over the political machinery. In Russia, for instance, a select group of individuals, most of whom amassed wealth through the privatization of state assets in the 1990s, hold significant sway over both the economy and the government. These oligarchs operate as intermediaries between the state and the market, blurring the lines between public and private interests. Their financial might allows them to shape policies in ways that favor their enterprises, while their close ties to political leaders ensure they remain untouchable. Similarly, in Latin America, large corporations have historically played a decisive role in politics. In countries like Brazil, construction giants such as Odebrecht were involved in massive corruption scandals that toppled governments. By bribing officials and funding campaigns, these corporations ensured that they would receive lucrative contracts, often at the expense of the public. The fallout from such corruption, political instability, economic hardship, and public disillusionment, demonstrates the dangerous interplay between money and power. The media as a tool of influence. The influence of money isn't confined to the political arena. The media, often referred to as the fourth estate, is another domain where financial power can distort reality. Wealthy individuals or corporations owning major media outlets can shape public opinion, frame narratives, and even decide what stories get attention. When the media is controlled by a handful of rich entities, it can create an echo chamber that supports the interests of those in power while suppressing dissenting voices. This phenomenon can be seen globally, but particularly in countries where press freedom is limited. For instance, in Turkey, media ownership is concentrated among a few businessmen with close ties to the government. These media outlets often act as mouthpieces for the state, stifling independent journalism and silencing opposition. When the flow of information is controlled by those with money and power, democracy itself is at risk. Influence over social movements and public opinion. Money also plays a critical role in influencing social movements. While grassroots activism is often driven by passion and ideology, large-scale movements require funding to sustain their operations, organize protests, and spread their message. Enter wealthy donors and corporations, who may provide funding for causes aligned with their interests. But this funding can come with strings attached. In the US, for example, the Koch brothers, who were billionaire industrialists, used their wealth to fund conservative political movements and think tanks. Their financial backing helped shape the narrative around issues like climate change, tax reform, and deregulation. By pouring money into campaigns, they were able to influence public opinion and shape policy in ways that aligned with their business interests. On the other side of the spectrum, philanthropic billionaires like George Soros have been accused of using their wealth to influence left-leaning causes around the world. While Soros Open Society foundations support a wide range of democratic initiatives, critics argue that his financial clout allows him to exert undue influence over the political and social landscape of countries where his foundations operate. Money as the ultimate power broker. In the end, the power of money lies not just in its ability to purchase goods and services but in its capacity to influence, manipulate, and control. It is the unseen force behind many of the world's political decisions, economic policies, and social movements. While money can be a tool for positive change, funding education, healthcare, and poverty alleviation, it can also be a weapon used by those in power to further entrench their control. As we navigate an increasingly complex world, it's essential to recognize the dual nature of money's power. On one hand, it can serve as a force for progress; on the other, it can perpetuate inequality, corruption, and oppression. The question remains, how do we ensure that money serves the many rather than the few? As we've seen, the power of money is undeniable. It shapes politics, influences media, and even impacts social movements. But the real question is, how can we make sure that money serves humanity, instead of controlling it? Can we use wealth to build a more just, equal, and progressive society? What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content that dives deep into important topics like this one. Let's continue exploring how money, power, and influence impact our world, and how we can use them for the greater good.